5 emotionally healthy rules to live by, inspired by metacognitive therapy. Rule number 1, you can always postpone thinking about whatever you're thinking about for later. Now, the way this works is that most of the time we're wondering about something, we're pondering something, we're worrying about a problem that we need to solve, there's a situation that we need to understand the meaning of. So we kind of go and spend a lot of time thinking about that thing. However, usually that thinking, that could be an innocent reflection of what happened or how can I approach this problem, turns into more a worrying type or even self-critical analysis or rumination. The difference between the two is that worrying and criticizing yourself and analyzing all of your problems is only going to make you miserable. It's going to alter your mood, it's not going to help you think clearly and solve the problem if there's a solution for that particular problem you are thinking about. Postponing whatever it is you're thinking about for later, let's say you plan 15 minutes every day, that is your reflection time or your worry time. And during that time, you're free to think as much as you want about that problem and find solutions to it. However, the rest of the day, let your mind have a break. Now, there are a lot of amazing benefits to postponing worrying, postponing thinking about your problems for later. One of them is that your emotions kind of clear up. Your mind is able to regulate all the thoughts and all the negative feelings that came up during your thinking. And if you postpone thinking more about that problem for later, your mind is going to take care of all these thoughts and emotions and help you feel better. When we worry and analyze something and go around in circles, we don't really come up with good solutions. The reason is that the mind is preoccupied with all this thinking, so it can't really access the levels of the brain that are able to help us solve complex problems or think creatively. So when we postpone for later, the mind is better able to come up with better solutions for us and help us solve the problems. You might find out once you get to your worry time that you have a different perspective on that problem. Perhaps the problem doesn't seem that severe after all, or it's not even worth thinking about anymore. Rule number 2, worrying about something is not the same thing as problem solving. Now, this is a very important rule to live by because most of us, when we spend a lot of time in our minds thinking about a problem, we think we're trying to find solutions for it or prepare for the future or learn from our mistakes. Most of us think we're doing that, but we're actually worrying and we're beating ourselves up. Let's say you messed up an important client meeting at work. And now you go home and you think about what you did because you're thinking that you're solving this problem. Because you're thinking that you're learning from this mistake by worrying about it and beating yourself up so that you can perform better in the future. However, that is not actual problem solving. Problem solving, on the other hand, is much more efficient. It takes a shorter period of time and you have an action plan by the end of it. So let's take that example with messing up a client meeting. Now, if I ruminated and beated myself up over that, it would go like this. Oh no, why did I do this? That is so stupid of me. Why did I not take their perspective into account? This is so ridiculous. I'm not going to be able to keep my job if I mess up like this in the future. Oh my God, I am completely incapable of doing anything important, and so on. You can imagine how I might feel after doing this for several hours. Now, if I instead stopped myself and shifted over to problem solving, it would maybe look like this. Okay, so what went wrong was actually that I didn't listen to their perspective before I came up with my solution. So the next time I'm in a similar situation, I need to make sure that I ask about their opinion first and ask about their perspective before I come up with a good solution. Okay, this is something I can actually act on. I have an action plan that I can take away from here, and I know how to implement that the next time I am in a similar situation. Rule number 3, thoughts are not facts. You don't need to listen to every thought that comes up in your mind, and your thoughts, your negative thoughts and emotions are not a sign of your gut feeling telling you something. I think a lot of us have learned that some thoughts are important to listen to. Let's say if you are suffering from depression or a mental illness, you think that listening to your negative thoughts and their frequency will help you assess whether you're feeling worse or better. So that way, you need to take your thoughts seriously in order to prevent yourself from spinning out of control or even do something drastic that you might regret later or could be harmful for you. Another way people take their thoughts seriously is that they think that their thoughts are the same thing as their gut feeling. If someone listened to all of their negative thoughts, they mistakenly think that this is their gut feeling trying to tell them something important. I am a firm believer in gut feelings because I think it picks up cues and information from the environment and from our interactions that we don't do consciously. So it's an important guide to listen to, and I absolutely think that we should do that more. The problem is, however, when we rely too much on our negative thoughts and our negative feelings and think that this is our gut feeling telling us something important. So how can you distinguish between the two? One good way to do that is to learn if you're someone who constantly analyzes and chases every negative thought and feeling that comes up during the day, that is probably not your gut feeling telling you something important. In my experience, the people who have the best access to their gut feeling are actually the ones who don't spend a lot of time analyzing every thought that comes up, every emotion that comes up. That way, they have a clearer mind and can better access that gut feeling when it's there and telling them something important. Rule number 4, just because you're feeling something in the moment, you don't need to act on it. This is especially the case in relationships. Let's say you are in a romantic relationship and you're sitting with your partner and your partner is somehow unresponsive or they're saying something without really thinking about it. You might experience thoughts like, that was insensitive, or don't they even care, or that was insulting, why did they say that? And you might feel insulted or angry or frustrated or nervous. So this is normal. We kind of have a lot of emotional reactions to the interactions that we have. However, if you think that you need to react on every little thought or every emotion that pops up in your mind just because they do, that is not the best way to go. The result is that you're going to have many conflictful situations and your relationships are going to suffer. Just because you have a certain thought, you don't need to act on it. Let's say you're doing an important project or you're working on your hobby and suddenly the thought comes up, this is boring, I'm not good at it anyway, why bother? Just because that thought came up, you don't need to listen to it, you don't need to act on it and put your work aside and do something completely different because you had a thought that this was boring or you had the thought that you were not good at it. Some people would then think that this is difficult for me to distinguish because sometimes it's important to listen to my thoughts telling me that this may not be the best value for my time or this activity may not be as important as this one, and I respect that. But this is when we come back to postponing thinking about that thing for later. A lot of people nowadays are easily offended and easily triggered by everything they come around. There are a lot of triggers in this world. We are inevitably going to get triggered by a lot of different things, but that doesn't mean that we have to act on them. Your actions are completely different from how you feel, and you can't really control how you feel, you can't control what kind of thoughts you have, but you can always control how you're going to respond and react to them. Rule number 5. Just because you feel a certain way, you don't have to wait to feel better in order to pursue your goals, have the conversations that are important, and work on the things that you need to work on. A lot of us have learned that if we feel demotivated for something, we need to wait to feel better before we can take action. How many times in your life have you chosen to do something despite feeling otherwise? Now, what does that tell you? Well, it tells you that you have full control over your actions, not over your emotions, not over your thoughts necessarily, but over how you react. Instead of waiting to feel a certain way before you can get up and do something in life, you can just do that thing. It sounds easy, and it actually is once you grasp the idea. So let's say you're feeling anxious about asking someone out. You don't have to wait to feel confident before you can do that. You can just get up and talk to that person and say something. Or you're working on a project and you're constantly bombarded by, I don't know how to do this, this is boring, or I'm incapable, this is not good enough. You don't have to listen to these thoughts. You don't have to wait for the feeling of confidence to take over you before you can resume your project. Most people think that emotions and action are the same thing, so they have to be aligned. But the thing is, you don't have to waste a lot of time and money and mental energy to get yourself in the right mood before you can do things. Instead, you can just do things.